hot surface retrofit on the Lynx grills. And you can begin with, as far as the types of grills that we do have, the front panels will, the older models will either have the screws here, so you take those off, take one off over here, maybe the 54 inch may have a screw in the middle, and then when you pull the drip pan out, up underneath here in this area you'll have some screws down there and over here and the middle one. So normally you'll pull the drip pan out first, undo your bottom screws over there, and like I said, on the 54 inch it's going to be some in the center too, so do those first. And you're going to put the drip pan back, lay some paper towels or some kind of cloth or something down in there. Newspaper would be good, because you're going to be laying the front panel. You're going to tilt it down and lay it right into the pan. When you go, you put some newspaper down in the pan here. You go and you're going to undo the screws here. You would be doing the bottom ones first, though. Underneath here, do those first. We've already done those. And you get the other ones there. And you're going to pull off the knobs. You can see it's already very loose. Then you're going to lift up and lay it down carefully. You can tell this one's had some use. And when you open it up, you'll have in the little bracket right here, there's a power converter. You have to have a power converter in order to do that retrofit. So if you don't see no power converter there, you may have a different year model, might be older, so you won't be able to do the fit. So always look for that. Then you can see there's a whole bunch of wires in here that's kind of confusing, but we'll get to that. We want to go ahead and remove all the cooking grids. They're filthy. And probably be that way too. Lay something down so you don't damage your side shelves. Remove all of those. Now you want to remove your briquette trays too. Remove all of them. Now you have the burners. You're going to be left here. You remove all the burners. You'll be lifting up on the back of it. And when you lift up out of this hole right here, you can see you want to keep the burner centered as you pull it out this way. Otherwise you're going to hang up on the air shutter, which is this part at the end there. But then leave you with an empty area here. You want to disconnect your LED lights from the front panel, which is this here. That's your front panel. It's very simple. You follow the wires. These are your LED lights. You follow them to where they connect to. You might want to make a note where you unplug those from so you remember where to plug them back into. So you're going to disconnect this one and this one so that you can remove the front panel. And you also will have to take this here converter out. There's a screw on the very bottom that you will undo, and then you'll be able to disconnect that from the wires over here, which I'm going to pull out here in a second. If you know you're going to do one of these hot surface retrofits, it'd be a good idea to either carry some small duct tape or even Scotch tape. I just got some regular Scotch tape here. That way, in case you're not real good at remembering things, when I told you about the LED lights, when you unplug it right here, you can see there's a three-way connector. So when you unplug that, this is the red wire. Get yourself some tape, just wrap it on here, So I put some tape right here, and then you can write your LED. Put red. Okay, I'd labeled the wires here. I said, unless you really know, you have your schematic with you, but it'd be a good idea to label it as some tape with you. And then in order to get the converter off, just take your panel here, tilt it up. And there's some screws. You'll normally have one there and then one right where that's missing. Take those screws out, and that will release the converter from the front panel. And you can then set your front panel aside. I forgot to mention, but when you come out to the job, make sure you have a wiring diagram. You can call in to Lynx. We can send you a wiring diagram of that grill. It'll look something like this for this particular year. So this way you know what wires are what and go where. That'll help a lot. LED light off of this, the black one. There's one left on there, and that's going to go to your light switch. So like I said, if you can label it, or if you're really that good at remembering, that's fine. Then you take that off. Then you're going to unplug the converter from the ones that go to the igniter micro switches. That's what these two are for. Label them if you can't remember. Okay, also finish the red wire on the converter. Then you're going to go ahead and cut the 4 wires left. There's 2 reds and 2 black. You cut those off. The 4 wires that we talked about cutting off, the 2 on the left side, when you hold it just like this, that's your battery wires. You're going to cut those off, and you're also going to cut these 2 off here. These are going to go to the rotisserie. You'll notice there are 2 blacks. It's one connection, but it's 2 black wires, 2 red wires. That's for the rotisserie jack. And the battery wires are these on the left of the converter. Remove your barbecue. The converter will have these wires like this hooked to it, in orange and black. You're going to cut this black wire here. You cut that wire, you're going to see there's a little black wire that's right there. That's where you then hook in the 3-way spade on there. On a cart, you'll find the battery holder right here. That's what's going to be removed. And you're going to pull the wires that you cut in the front panel there. You'll be pulling them through here after you undo the zip ties. Make sure your transformer is always unplugged before you start anything. It's right over there. You remove those so you can get access to the wires a lot easier. These are the wires that went to the battery. You pull them through and then follow them all the way over to your... Okay, you have to undo these snip ties right here. That way you can take the wires out or use a knife, whatever you got. Okay, we have the 2 wires that are coming from the transformer, which go to the back of these connectors. You're going to disconnect those because you're going to be getting a new transformer with the hot surface. You release the wires from the back connectors there. You're going to undo the bolts that hold the bracket for the transformer and for the battery backup. You can unscrew those from the back side. They fall off just like that. Right there, that all gets removed. You toss that black wires off of, and the red wires off the micro switch. Do it on all of them. Micro switch wires, igniter wires. Careful not cutting other wires. Remove the wires now. And then plug them there. Now they're red one still. The instructions you get, it'll say after you've removed the wires off your micro switch and valves to go ahead and then go up to the rotisserie. Since you're already here, go ahead and continue to get this front heat shield removed. Move the front panel. You'll see these bolts right here on each side, over there, and then all the way over the other side right there. Their screwdriver, you can remove those out 3/8. I'm going to remove the panel. You want to be careful so you don't damage the micro switches, so we'll show you how to do that. If this unit hasn't been worked on before, you normally, in this area on the far right, you have a little metal tab here that you will slide over so you can remove the heat shield. We're removing the heat shield now. You tilt it. Be real careful because you're starting to hit micro switches. You don't want to damage them. Perfect. Now the front panel's off. Those wires that you cut on the micro switches, you can now remove them all by pulling them off. Do each one and remove all those wires out of there. Go ahead and remove the old igniters off of there. I would saturate it with some good liquid rinse before you try that, or some sort of a, nut breaker of some sort of liquid because they get burned on. There is a product called Kroil, K-R-O-I-L. Just look for that online, and it's the best stuff for breaking into the rust. Liquid rinse, it's okay, but sometimes you gotta let it saturate for a minute or two and do it again. And remove the other ones. These bolts a lot of times are really seized on there, burned on, rust. So that's why it's important to try to saturate it with that, some sort of a nut remover before you try it. Lay out all your parts that came in the box. That way you can identify them all. The biggest one is the easiest one. That's going to be for a Pro Sear. And these are the other standard burners we have. And you got your rotisserie and your nuts and bolts. Just kind of get them all out, make sure they're all there. You got your harnesses here too. You're not going to be able to get the job done or even fire it and test it proper way. You're not going to be slipping the old igniter through the old hole. That's the correct position, like that. And then you'll pass the wire. I'm going to show that. Pass the wire down through this opening right here by the drip pan, as close to that area. Get it in like that. That's your nut. The units had a Pro Sear, most of them will actually, and then some just have all standard burners. So this is what it will look like when you put all the brackets on. Depending if it's a 54 inch, you'd have another one or two for a 27. And then we're going to show you what it looks like for the bracket for a Pro Sear. Pro Sear one, because this one doesn't have one on it, but it will mount in this position, right about like so, and you screw it on. Which I showed earlier, how you pass them down through there. They're going to hang out so that way you can get to them, so it looks like. The micro switch and igniter wires out of the bag. It'll look just like that. And you're going to attach them to the micro switch. Rotisserie wire that, like I say, if you did label it, this is micro, but you're going to put this three-way splitter in there, plug it in so you can plug the black wires for your igniter and micro switch right onto that. Okay. Alright, filling it there. Just lay out your black wires there once you plugged it into the orange wire that came off that rotisserie igniter. You can then hook the first white wire. Little spade connector inside there. Sometimes it may be favoring one side. You won't be able to slip this on, so just bend it enough to where you can straighten it out to slip that on. No, you won't make any mistakes. There's only the white wire from each igniter. One has a spade on it. You'll use that for that black connection to the jumper wires that go to each micro switch. And you have the other end. This is going to go to your micro switch. You can tell there's a much smaller connector. Alright. Then you have the other spade connector there. You'll hook it at the connection on the white wire from the igniter. Now, at this point, before you start putting your wires onto the micro switch, you want to put the heat shield back on so you don't damage the micro switches and mess up the wires.
So I need at least...
You slide it back in the exact same way you took it out. Go at an angle. You're going to line up the little studs that are right in here so you can put the screws back on with your 3/8 nut driver. Go ahead. That's how you tighten that up. Take the red wire harness, which is going to go to your micro switches too. You probably could use some needle nose pliers, you know, if you got big hands, to where you can slip them on, but just don't force it to where you go at an angle. Come straight down onto them. That way it keeps the tab from bending. Make sure it's the middle tab that you put the red wire on. Rotisserie harness wire that you may have labeled, may not have, but it's the double red one, double black. You're going to have a red wire left over from the micro switches. Plug it into the red. Very good. Okay, the black wire that we plugged into the three-way splitter, and then you'll have an orange wire there too. You're now going to take that and plug it into the rotisserie wire that's left. It's a double black wire. You're not going to have a lot of double black wires. You plug it in. Now you made your ignition hookup. The black wire which into the three-way splitter that went to the rotisserie jack. Just don't get confused. And there's another three-way splitter like this one here, but it has two red wires that it does not get hooked to by the ignition wire. That is the LED, the red ones, which if you did label them, it helps you from getting confused if you try to do the labeling. It's a lot easier and quicker for you to go back to assemble everything once you've labeled it. Go ahead, we have the white wire left from the igniters. We're going to attach them to the micro switches. It's the far left. It looks like far left. They're very hard to get on sometimes. They're really tight, so that's when you may bend and break a micro switch. So try to just get it perfectly lined up. Maybe a little bit, I would suggest putting dielectric grease on those connections before you go to do it. That way it will slip on a lot easier. Perfect. Grab all the wires, the black micro switch wires and the red ones. Start tying them to the manifolds. You know, get them all out of the way. Make sure you don't have anything over the valves. When you close that panel, those wires are going to be right there. Just a little zip tie that comes in the kit. Snug them up, pull on them. That way it holds them in place. Make sure nothing is really sticking right against the metal if you can help it. Important that you do use the zip ties though to keep them out of the way, especially when you're going to not allow any slipping of the wires coming off the micro switch when you try putting the front panel on. So it's just good to keep them out of the way. Depending on how you want to really wad it up, because each time a person does it, they might have the wires, you know, grouped together differently, but you get the idea. There you go. So they're just kind of out of the way if you're trying to do. Make sure you move your wires over here so you're not having them. There you go. See, as long as there's nothing in this area, below or on the side is fine. And do the LED lights, so bring your front panel back, because you never really took the LED harness off. Just remember, you're going to have black to black, red to red. That's correct. And then the black one. That fell off. It was on there earlier. Now you can go ahead and make sure all the wires are out of the way and reinstall the panel. See how the wires sometimes can get in the way. Just make sure they're out of the way when you close the panel. You shouldn't see any wires directly right where the valve is. Be like this. And then install the screws back on. Valve's back on. There are also some screws that were underneath the bottom plate here. You put those in before you slide the drip pan back in, but we already had them done. Go ahead and remove the warming rack, and you got the bracket there for your rotisserie. We're going to take that apart. You locate it on the bottom. Like I said, always probably use some liquid wrench or some that coil, and all the screws you'll be taking off. This is what it's going to look like there. There'll be no more screws there. You're going to have to undo, take this bracket off. Make sure the wires don't fall back in too far when you unhook the 2 orange wires. There you go. And once you pull the orange wires off of this, you're going to remove the thermocouple right out of its sleeve. Might be a little stuck in there sometime, but it'll come out. Do not let it fall back in that little square hole there. It's hard to fish out, but you can get to it, but it's just no fun. Good. Now this will get you so you can get to your screws for the bracket. Screws you undo for the bracket. You'll be getting a new bracket. Comes with the igniter already there in it. Now it's all taken off. You can get ready to get your other one now. You get the little connectors that came with it. Kit, there's connectors like this that you're going to have, and you're going to snip the end of the orange wires that you got here, snip them off, strip out the wire so you can expose it, take away the insulation, and then you're going to go ahead and crimp on the new connectors. It'll be already assembled in the bracket, but in case it's not, you're going to install this for the rotisserie bracket, like so on the outside. Use all the new screws that come in the kit too, and then you'll line up that, put in the screw, and this is the hole for the thermocouple. Strip the ends of the wires here, twist them. It's a great idea to get a proper crimping tool to have that, so that you can crimp them on there good. Alright. These aren't the best, but they'll work. Crimp it on there good and just test that they're on there tight. Crimp the second one on there.
We had when we had the other generator here.
Now they're both on there. Kind of pull on them, make sure they're not wobbling all around and twisting around. Longer screws in the kit to mount the bracket for the igniter. Screw that in. There's 2 screws, make sure you use both of them. And they're both long screws. That's installed. Now you're going to put the thermocouple in place here, or hook up your wires, but sometimes it might be easier one way or the other, whatever you find comfortable for yourself. Go ahead and tuck the wires back in. Make sure you're not dragging them across the sharp edge if there is one, but I don't think you will. And you get some nut in those pliers to slide the sleeve in there. One thing we notice on these sleeves, you're going to have to make sure you get this as round as possible, so you get your pliers and kind of squeeze it from this side and then this bottom side here to get it as round as possible, because it may be hard to slip into the little hole right here, but we were able just to squeeze a little bit and get it started, and then we slip this in like so, and it pushes it in there. If you slide it on here, if that thing is round, it'll work if you slide it on here like we first showed earlier, but if it doesn't, you have to take it off and then go ahead and squeeze it round like I mentioned and slide it back in. Then you're going to take your thermocouple, get it started in there, and then get some pliers and slide it in because it gets a little bit tight. Just be careful not to break it. There you go. That's in there now. And then you'll have about 3/4 to almost, about 3/4 of an inch sticking over onto that. There we go. Detail that comes in the kit looks just like this. It's the only thing we have. It looks like that. So you take that, and on the back of the grill, on a built-in it'll be different. You'll still be able to get to the back of the grill on the same right back side to get to this connector there. You got male and female, so you won't be able to mess up on hooking them up because they're different. So make sure when you plug the male and female that would actually line up, because these are both different. Hook those in, and you got the 4 pins. Well, it's a square 4-pin with 2 pins in, 4-pin connector, Molex. Line up the 2. Now you've plugged in your transformer. We're going to be testing the unit here soon, so we just want to make sure we have the transformer all plugged in. There you go. Note though that there are accessory connectors. They're real thick white braided wires here, and that's going to be by itself. You'll notice that, nothing hooked to it. Don't plug any of these into that at all. Put your burners back in, because we will be testing those igniters, and we don't have gas to this one, but at least if you did have gas, you want to make sure it's going to work for you. So alright, we're ready. Everything up, and you plug it in, you notice you're not getting no ignition. You're going to have to go and unplug the connection on the transformer and check and see if there's a defective transformer. It can happen, but you want to test the voltage there and make sure you got voltage out of that. Go ahead, you're going to check and see if your lights work. That way you know you got the transformer working too. We got LEDs and we also have the hood light, so that means you got voltage coming from that. And we're unplugged, sorry. And it was unplugged, so just make sure it is plugged in, and let's test the igniters now before you put all the other stuff back in. There's a rotisserie one that's starting to glow. So we know we've got igniters hooked up. There's the one on the left there. Just make sure they all are glowing. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes a vendor could produce one of these igniters and just be bad. But they're all working, that's great. We were just testing the grill, but make sure you go ahead and unplug the transformer and mount it back. If it's on a cart, you mount it back. Here's the back side of the cart. Mount it back on there and push your bolts through there from the other side and mount it back on there. And then if it's on a built-in, you're going to be mounting this transformer on the access, inside the access doors somewhere, out of the way, up on the sidewall there. Contractor will be mounting it. For example, you probably have a set of access doors like this. You'd open them up inside, and inside there you can mount your transformer. And you're all set.